I need my GraphQL hat.
Nice.
Now we can do working group.
Hello, friends.
Hey, hey.
Just as a heads up, I have a like half of a head cold. So if I'm going slow today, that explains why.
Yeah, no one told us winter was coming back.
Winter is coming back.
Is that what happened? That explains a lot.
I'm planning to go biking on Sunday, and I'm definitely hoping that spring comes back again after the winter. It's super cold. Like I have my GraphQL hat, but it's not just for the logo. It's actually really cold.
So strange.
I'm gonna close this. Logs.
I think San Francisco has the exact same weather as you guys have. I just looked it up.
Is this a general statement? Just across the world, it's now the same
Across
weather?
the world. Yeah. Well,
Nice.
sorry, you joined halfway through as we were talking about that in France. Paris in particular, I looked up just now.
Yeah, Martin is wearing the
Mm.
hat anyway all year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
It's
my
it's
jacket on because it's chilly over here.
It's 28 degrees Celsius in Singapore. So that's that.
I forgot about this. Siri say that I don't have to pack my pullovers.
That sounds pretty nice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, who else
80,
going?
80% of humidity.
Okay, yeah, that's t-shirt weather for sure.
I
Until
think
now,
it's. Sorry, go ahead.
I think until now it's me, Michael, and then maybe someone of the ambassadors. I think we reached out, right,
Cool.
Martin?
I think Akshat is super motivated to go. He was asking for some help with the travel, but if he can arrange that, I think he'll go. And I also reached out this morning to Leonardo. Does anyone know Leonardo Losoviz? I hope I'm getting this right. He's founder of Gato GraphQL, GraphQL project for WordPress, and apparently he lives nearby, so he might be interested as well.
Isn't he from Brazil? I mean, depends on what you mean by nearby, but
I don't know. He was in API Day Singapore last year. I don't know.
yeah, okay. You will see. We'll go there, and then there will be a table somewhere with two guys with pink shirts at least behind it.
Brad,
And
I'm very
that's
curious to hear how it goes. I'm glad a couple of TSC will be there.
yeah, we are too. We're looking forward to it. It was Michael booked already a while back, but so we realized that it's gonna be tight with people at the booth, and we're like, let's do it. So I booked a flight too, which surprisingly was cheap in one direction, but absolutely bonkers in the other. Because of
Really interesting.
the whole Iran thing, they reroute the traffic
Oh,
from Dubai over Singapore, I believe. So that's happening.
all right, let's kick things off. I think we got stable attendance. A slightly smaller group than in the past, but that's cool. We got a nice tight agenda. I'll kick things off with a reminder of our handful of links at the top of the agenda file. Spec membership agreement, participation guidelines, contribution guide, code of conduct, and a reminder that we take notes, summarize, and publish these to YouTube. Before I dig into the whole agenda, let's do names to faces for the benefit of our AV equipment and YouTube posterity. I'll start since I'm at the top of the list here. Hello, everybody. My name is Lee.
Hello, my name is Martin. And Pascal, you're
Hello.
next.
My name is Pascal. I was opening the agenda at this very moment.
Also a check to make sure everyone's got the agenda file. Yep.
Hey, I'm Benoit from Apollo. Benji, you're next. Oh, Benji's not here.
He's here.
Benji,
Sorry.
you're muted.
Oh, he was muted, in fact. Hey, folks, Benji from GraphQL.
Hey guys, Rob from First News.
I'm Matt from Meta.
All right. Everyone listed is here. Love it. Okay, quick look over our agenda, make sure we got everything. We've got some editorial stuff for leaf fields, some updates on directives, updates on the OTel working group and the HTTP spec working group. Sounds like very exciting ones. And then a broader conversation about service capabilities, which is also very cool. Anything else we want to talk about that's not on this list?
I wanted to talk about the Golden Path, but I'm still doing the work on that. So we'll see
Okay.
where we get, if there's time.
Yeah, if we get to the end and you want to give an update on that, that's totally fine. All right, let's jump in. Editorial use leaf fields doesn't have a name, but
Yeah, I think I put this one. It
Martin,
came
you put this
from
one here.
Yeah, it came from a pull request, and what I do when I see those kind of pull requests is like just add it to the agenda, ping the person who opens the pull request if they want to join, and if not, at least it's a reminder for us to look at the pull request.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty straightforward one. It adds the concept of leaf fields. Actually, I think, Benji, you added the definition for leaf field, which is good. So what do you all think?
Do we really have a definition for leaf fields?
Yeah, we did. This looks like a formatting change, right? Because I'm looking at the diff right now, where we literally say, and I think you're attributing it correctly to Benji definition. A leaf field is any field with a scalar enum unwrapped type. So it's just any field that doesn't have another object or an array to iterate into. Which all this PR is doing is turning that into a definition block and then referring to it, because we just, in the language say, we go down two fields which return scalar value, basically reiterating what it means to be a leaf field. Yeah.
There's one actual fix, which is if you take the current text, it mentions scalar values in the first part, but it omits enums. So this is the actual fix, and then there is also the addition of the definition.
And technically lists of those as well.
Yes.
Yep. Operations specify their selections down to, yeah, this is more clear because before it was talking about down to fields which have scalar values, which was meant to encompass enums because enums have scalar values. But cool. I'm gonna merge this. I think this is a good change. Thanks for picking it up out of the list.
I have a question quickly regarding this. I can't remember off the top of my head. What does the colon do? It turns it into a definition block.
Yes, double colon, leading with a double colon. I think this
But
may be our own
but,
invented syntax.
Yeah, it's specmd.
It's
but-
specmd syntax that we invented.
but it's inside of the explanatory text of leaf field selections. Is this correct?
So this
Yeah,
won't
so
this won't actually change the way that renders. It will still render exactly the same. What it does do is it means that any italic text that has the words leaf fields, if you click on that, it will take you to this paragraph.
Okay, all good. Sorry. Just
yeah,
need to
SpecMD has all kinds of these little tricks. Anytime you italicize something, it checks to see if it's a definition. And if it is, it also links it. And it links it back to the block where it was defined. And the double colon says the first thing that's italicized in this paragraph is the thing that's being defined in this definition, which is a little weird, but it works.
just haven't
SpecMD
seen
has
this.
got lots of little weird stuff.
Just haven't seen this in a while, so
Um,
time to read the spec again.
yeah, read the raw markdown version because that's what Benji and I have been doing as we go through. And there was like a phase, I guess, was that maybe roughly a year ago now, where we were going through and trying to just define as many things as we could. Like once we cooked up this particular new syntax, that's a definition. That's a definition. Anyway, cool. Thank you, Martine, for picking that one out. Aim merged, done. Check that one off the list. Next up, directives on directives. Benoit, this one's for you.
Yeah, so we talked about this a few months ago. Currently, this is RFC1. We have a spec PR. Let me paste that in the chat. And also GraphQL JS PR. And yeah, basically, I'd like to see what's needed to move this further, maybe to RFC2. I guess the questions are, is this something we want to solve? And is this the right way to solve it? Or are there any unresolved concerns or challenges? I think last time we talked, maybe the only comment was that the syntax was maybe not the most readable, but it is also it's simple, it matches what we do elsewhere. I don't think any. I mean, I don't know if there's a better alternative for the syntax. And yeah, basically that's it. Yeah.
My opinion on this is directives on directives has been desired for a while. Quite a few people have asked for it. And there doesn't really seem to be a better place to put it than what you have proposed. If we put it after the locations, then it stops us from in future being able to deprecate one of those locations, which isn't ideal. Putting it after the on keyword seems foolish, and putting it after the directive keyword was definitely confusing. So really, this is the only place that it can go without being ambiguous. The only other option would be to introduce like another keyword that you could then use as a precursor to directives, and I don't think it warrants that. So if we want to support directives on directives, this seems like the right way of doing it, even though it is a little bit weird.
Yeah, agreed.
I think the value is high enough that the weirdness of the syntax when reading is worth it, especially given it probably will happen rarely enough where the like, wait, what's happening is actually a worthwhile like response to evoke. You're muted, Lee.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm definitely muted. I agree. I think the case where it feels weirdest is where we stick like arbitrary names in for the directive being named and the directive being applied. Like directive at foo at bar, you're like, what is going on? This is very
Yeah.
confusing. But if you see a real one in practice and you're like, directive, some clearly special kind of directive at deprecated, it's like obviously what that means is this is a directive definition that's been deprecated. So I'm not actually worried about the practicalities of this being confusing. It has the potential to be confusing, and in practice, probably won't actually be confusing. And then otherwise, I agree. Like this is the most sensible way to apply it. Looks good. Um, okay, so I guess next actions then are we missing anything from the GraphQL JS pull request?
Yeah, that was my because I think I didn't get enough eyes on it. I think the spec PR, I think everybody here had a look and it's not very long. But the GraphQL JS PR, I think it probably need somebody who knows more than I do to have a better look at it.
That seems fair.
Does Claude count?
Good question.
One thing on this is you are introducing the include deprecated argument on directives, um, which matches the patterns that we have elsewhere in introspection, but also follows patterns that I think were probably a mistake and we should solve a different way. So my general opinion on deprecation is that we should move to a system where you essentially request either the schema or the schema with everything deprecated removed, and you don't remove deprecated things on every element. So I have a small concern here that we are just extending like a not ideal pattern that we already have, whereas we should be deprecating that old system and moving to a better one, in my opinion.
Yeah. So maybe just simply not have this argument, maybe, right? Like they would be included no matter what.
No, I think if we want to rush this out, we should add it, but ideally, we would like to my mind, I would change the definition of Dunder schema or something like that, or make it as a feature under Dunder service if we add that, where you can then ask for schema include deprecated true or false, and then just everything below that effectively inherits it automatically. If we did that, you wouldn't need this argument. But if we're not doing something like that, then you still will need a way to see the schema with the deprecated directives removed in case,
Yeah,
for example, they reference a deprecated scalar.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
that seems like a reasonable thing to figure out how to fix. Um, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say that that is at the level of details to hammer out at draft phase. So this is RFC2. It's a draft. I think we all agree that the syntax is the correct one. Figuring out the very specific details of introspection, um, we should really make sure we get right. Otherwise, I think this is like quite straightforward add. Cool. Um, anything specifically we can be doing on the GraphQL JS one to make sure that that has the right eyeballs on it?
Um,
Or is there anything in particular other than just generally wanting somebody with more knowledge of the code base to review it? Is there anything in particular that you're nervous about, or you felt like this is the part of the code base I know the least about?
no, unfortunately, I think the whole code base is.
From implementing it in Apollo Kotlin, one thing that is that I had a question about his compatibility. Like this introduces new directive locations and new data structures, which are all experimental right now. And I don't know if that's something we can do in JavaScript because like it's all public API, right? Like we add a new directive location. There's no real way to hide this from users. So would it be okay to release this under a feature flag, or how comfortable are we with this?
It looks like that's what the PR does now, is that there's a experimental feature flag that you have to tick on. It's true that the data structures then exist kind of regardless of whether the flag gets turned on or not. But that's okay. Like the data structure exists and it's just never, an optional field that is never filled unless you enable the experimental flag, which seems fine.
It's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, just I guess just a general review of the whole PR. Maybe it needs more tests. I'm not sure.
I mean, if it's under a feature flag and all the tests are passing, we can already have people play with it, right? Like we're not blocked.
True.
How do things get merged in GraphQL JS usually? Does it happen in GraphQL JS working groups? Maybe it's just a matter of bringing this there.
That's generally like the best pattern, yeah. Or you can DM, I think Yakov's probably the best person to DM at the moment. So just DM Yakov and encourage him to prioritize this one. Yeah.
I might just merge it right now because I'm reading through the whole thing right now and it looks very straightforward. There's nothing that's like adding a new concept or doing something that could be disruptive in any way. And it is also all pretty safely gated behind the flag.
We should change the type of the include deprecated argument to be non-nullable before we merge it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oh yeah, also one thing I was not completely clear on is that this targets the GraphQL 16 branch. Is that still what we want to do?
Yeah, GraphQL 16 is our current release. It's still safe to target that, and then it can be forward ported to 17.
Okay, good.
Okay. on this 16 branch. Ooh, wait, do we want to merge it? Okay, that's I guess the other thing to make sure we're doing right. Do we want to merge it into the 16 branch, or is that,
Yeah, that's
or
fine,
do
I
we want to merge
think.
into main? Okay.
No, that there is no main currently.
Ah, right. I forgot that we did that. Okay. Um, yeah, I think once we get that one little tweak to the, since we know that's something we want to do anyway for include deprecated, then this is safe to merge. Uh, just ping one of us with merge rights, and we've agreed we're going to merge it, so we'll just do that. Since it's experimental, then I feel pretty comfortable like merging it and then iterating on it later once it's already merged. That seems fine. But it seems easier to patch this PR and merge it than it does to merge it now and then patch the other thing in later. That seems annoying.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Cool.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Next up, Otel. Pascal.
Yay. So I will make it quick. I hope at least. Google Chrome. I think it's this one. Share. Yay. You should see pull request. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So we have a pull request to the semantic conventions repository with GraphQL semantic conventions. And this pull request actually removes most of the conventions that were there before and adds new ones that we have designed in the OTIL work group. Attendance was a bit sparse this year. I think after Christmas, people either forgot or didn't really want to attend anymore. So took what we had, made this proposal, and now we have a specification. This is now an open pull request at their repository. Once this is merged, it will be published under the semantic conventions of open telemetry. There is two things here that are worth considering. First of all, I specifically said they shouldn't merge this, even if everything is green, until we give green light. Therefore, please have a read. It's surprisingly thorough what's written here. But what we landed on is that the actual traces shouldn't be that expensive. So one thing that we wanted when we started with OpenTelemetry, we wanted to make sure is that things like the GraphQL document is not included on every request in the span tags. And we also don't want to trace all of the resolvers because that would just give an explosion. So what we followed here is the best practices of OpenTelemetry. So we try to make low cardinality span names, high cardinality span names. The ones which everything is the same and not different kinds. And yeah, so these are we have tracing under the spans. We have metrics under the metrics, and we also have a definition of events, which could be interesting in case that we are also interested in log events. We landed on defining events for errors so that we can add multiple errors to a trace and report it like this. Yeah, so I would say everyone which is interested in this and builds or has built a server, have a quick read, do some sanity check. If this is something that you can essentially that you think that this makes sense, and also for people which have APIs which have millions of requests per second, it might be good to give this a read with a bit of a critical eye to see if this is something which is feasible also on scale, at scale.
Is anyone already using this?
Yeah, so we are on the latest so we had an OpenTelemetry specification since years, but now we aligned with this. We Nitro supports specifically this format now, and the goal is to make this a bit more popular and get other telemetry solution to do the same. I know
What,
that
what did you say the solution was? What was the
Nitro,
name?
our telemetry stack
Got it.
supports it. But other than that, as it's not merged yet, I don't think there's much support other than this in the ecosystem. We do so the guild is also on board. They're also looking to build this into yoga, and we hope that so we had people from Datadog and Apollo as well in the calls. So I hope that once this specification is merged, we also get a bit of we also get other telemetry solutions to pick it up, and that would be nice because then you can essentially switch between them without being locked in. That would be
Right.
preferred. Yeah, that's it. Give it a read. And then the next question would be, um, how do we proceed once people have read through this? Should we just go ahead and merge? Do we have like, as this is not part, it's done by us, but it's not under our, foundation umbrella, you know? That's a bit the question, how we proceed. Because I'm not sure, I don't think that we can put this through all of the stages. We could, I don't
You
know.
mean because it's the document is not like we are contributing to a separate specification rather
Yeah,
than this being our specification?
so we've built this specification in the OpenTelemetry working
Yeah.
group repository, but I moved it in the pull request so that we actually get feedback from the semantic conventions team. They now, all of the comments in this pull request essentially is them scrutinizing what we've built, which makes a lot of sense. So now the question is, if they give green light, what do we do? Right? Because once we merge it, I expect this to be in the next dot release of the semantic conventions, and then it's fact, you know.
Yep. I think Martin's suggestion here in the chat is the right one, which is we should just make sure that all TSC puts eyes on it and says we think that this is now done. And if it's done, then we should just all say that we agree, and then we ship it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Cool. Yeah, that's it.
Is there, one last question? Is there versioning in those specification, or is it like us where there is no breaking change ever, no versioning, and everything has to be backward compatible forever?
I mean,
Like,
I've just proposed a breaking change because in the specification, which is now in the graphical specification, which is now which is now merged into the semantic conventions, every request has the GraphQL document as a span value,
Mm.
which you don't want when you execute 7,000 times a minute the same query. Therefore, this is gone now, and there's also no real replacement for it. So technically, it's gone, so it's broken. But
I guess it's the early days as well, so it's a bit more flexible.
well, there is versioning of the semantic conventions, right? It's not that
Okay.
there's no versions of it, but the thing is that when you ingest so OpenTelemetry, essentially, your server implements one version of the specification, and the backend implements another version of the specification, and they may or may not work together. But there's no like you don't provide a specific header or whatever
Yeah,
or the resource identifier in OpenTelemetry. So yeah.
sounds good. Thanks.
There's one thing that when you read through this, we've introduced something that's called the GraphQL processing type. The reason why we added this is just for context, is that in OpenTelemetry, everything has these nice IDs, in the specification, so that you know that this is actually a validation span or a parsing span or a variable recursion span or whatever. But these IDs are not transferred to the telemetry system. Which has a bit the problem of this is that when you then analyze the spans in the telemetry system, you have no idea which of these spans is the execution span, which of these span is the parsing span, and which of these span is the variable recursion span. And we took a bit of inspiration from how the AI, Gen AI semantic conventions work. They also have this type of the span, and we now just use this. So we now have an execute span, which is the whole thing. And then we have a parse span, we have a validation span, and it's very easy to filter by them. So if you want to know how long it takes to validate one of your operations, you just slap in the operation hash, and then you can filter by the processing type.
Sounds good.
Cool. Next.
What is next? GraphQL over HTTP? Should we move to GraphQL over HTTP?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Martin
Benji,
and Benji, this is for you
do
guys.
you want to do this together? I think I added this, and then you said it's ready for RFC3.
Yeah. So just to recap on where we got to with the HTTP spec, spawned out a subgroup, worked on it, basically got it ready to merge, but there was a little bit of feedback that said, it needed a little bit of text to do with the security stuff and a few other things. We ultimately got that reviewed and merged, and also realized that there was kind of a missing feature. One of the main motivations for the HTTP spec or for the new features in the HTTP spec, is to make it so that non-GraphQL tooling can sort of understand what GraphQL is doing without having to read the response body. And one of the things that we have that's a bit different from everyone else is we have partial success. So encoding partial success as 200 doesn't really help your alerting pipelines. Like, you're not going to start seeing that there's errors coming back from one of your subsystems or whatever if everything just says it's 200 okay. So we kind of need a response code for that. But there isn't one. There's a few that are close, like really close, but not quite right. So I can't remember what they all are off the top of my head, but we went through each of them and basically ruled them all out for various purposes. But fortunately, the HTTP spec was designed to be extensible. So we proposed using the 294 status code, where 94 kind of like PA in ASCII, in LeetCode code. So partial. There doesn't seem to be any conflicts with that. There was concerns, and there have been concerns that this might break something. So we asked for people to give any example of something that this breaks. This has been asked at this working group, at the HTTP working group. It's been asked at the GraphQL Foundation board. I've also reached out to a number of other people. I've reached out to people that help maintain the HTTP spec and stuff like that. So far, no one has given a single example of a piece of software that this breaks. From my reading of the HTTP spec, basically, if you don't understand a status code, you should look at the first digit of it, and that should guide you as to what to do. So it should be okay. But at this point, I think the only way to find out whether it's not okay or not is to ship it and see if anyone complains. So I have gone ahead, after having this open for quite a long time, like over 9 months, I think, and merged that into this version of the spec. And also, one of the issues that the spec had is we sort of said, in these situations, use HTTP 400, and otherwise use whatever sensible HTTP code there is. And it kind of gave the impression that like we're basically moving to using 200 and 400 and that's it. And that's not really the case at all. So I've also merged in a big chunk of text that is like, if this situation happens, you should use this code. If you're a small ceramic pot, then you should use 418, etc. So yeah, all those kind of more common error cases are now like explicitly in there with the different status codes, which I think is helpful. So essentially, HTTP spec is done. It is, to my mind, ready to be published. It does require everyone to have a good read of it, but this is basically the first version. And then we already have a big queue of stuff to go into the next version. We've got trusted documents, we've got variable batching, we've got proposals to remove the deprecated parts of the spec and put them into an appendix. We've got all sorts of other things. So the sooner we can get this first version out, the sooner we can get onto the next bit, which is the more fun stuff that we really want to do. Martin, over to you.
Yeah, I would really like to move the application JSON media type to Appendix A before we do the first release. I think it's like people are complaining about complexity and so on, and it would make the spec a lot easier to read. Like it's like this is the new thing, like this is the thing that is working well, and you will have good observability. And compatibility is important. And if you want it, you can read that other thing. But if you're only worried about the future, like I think it gives a better message. So I actually just opened just before this call, so a pull request to move one section, which is status code application JSON, to a separate file. And I would really like this to happen before we do the release, because then we can tweet, we can make a follow-up blog post from the April Fools from yesterday and say, hey, now we have a nice, clean solution for everyone. And I think that's a very compelling message.
Sorry to chime in. It's very important because what I've seen people reply to the 500 blog posts on all of the socials is that they don't know. Like they complain that there cannot be a 403 and a 401 and whatever, although that there can be one.
Yeah.
So I think getting that released would be fantastic. Then getting the blog post out and catching these cases. Like, did you know that you can actually say with HTTP status code that you are not authorized to do something?
I would caution a little bit on what you were just saying there, Pascal, because, for example, if you're not authorized to issue a GraphQL request, then returning like a 401 or a 403 to say why that is reasonable. But if you're not authorized to call a specific field, even a
Yes.
mutation field,
Yes.
in that case, you wouldn't be doing that thing. And I think that's one of the things that people like commonly trip over. And essentially, I think would be
Counterproductive?
no, it's more sort of theater. It's like, oh, you've got HTTP status codes now, but also they still don't give you the information that you need for that mutation, which is like if we had the same thing with mutations that we had with subscriptions, where only one mutation field is permitted, then we could use the status code for a mutation. And that would make sense.
Yes, I understand this. I do understand this. Like on the query, I'm not worried about the query side because you have the same problems with any API. That's not a graphical problem. Like if you can load the user, but you're not allowed to see the address, then you also should not return a 403. Like it's pretty much the same thing there, right?
Yeah, with requests, normally you would just return if it was a nested structure from like a REST API, you would just return null in the relevant place. You'd only return like a 404 or a 403 if you can't request the entire resource. If it's a
Yeah.
subpart of it, you just put a null there. And the same is true for GraphQL, but it is mutations that people really care about. If you want to
Yeah.
say like 201 created, you can't do that with GraphQL because you might have two mutation fields. We could go a little bit further and say if you issue a GraphQL request that has exactly one mutation field, then you may use an HTTP status code for that. But that's really like the GraphQL over HTTP spec really acts as a layer on top of the GraphQL spec. It does not require insertion into the like graph. It encompasses it. It doesn't insert
Yeah,
into
no,
it.
I know, but it would be like you said before, right? I understand the problem, but you said before that the server is allowed to return a status code which makes sense, right? And it kind of is like if there's only one mutation in the mutation, then you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
let's get it.
Seems
Let's
like it
figure
could
it
be
out.
a should, not must in the spec, maybe in that scenario. Like if there's one, because usually there is one, right? Like it doesn't have to be one, but in
It.
that case,
I mean, I personally, I've never written a mutation with more than one mutation in the mutation. That could be because of the APIs, how we write APIs, but I also think that it's generally probably a bad practice to do so, but that's just my personal opinion.
No, I strongly agree with that. The way that the GraphQL spec is written for how you execute mutations is basically that they run independently of each other. Like if the second one fails, you don't undo the first one, unless, of course, the error bubbles. And that a lot of people expect to be able to do like an SQL style transaction where you can run one mutation and then another by putting them in the same document. And that's obviously not what GraphQL specifies. And traditionally implementing that kind of thing in something like PostgreSQL, we have to like use save points to say, no, that first one's going to go ahead anyway, even if the second one fails. And it's like actually quite complex. But yeah, it's not what people want. People want that kind of transactional whole thing. And really, we should like the whole like nested mutations thing, we should be teaching them there is one mutation field and it does one thing. We should really like discourage the use of more than one mutation field. So yeah, I 100% agree with you that I don't think it's a best practice to ever have more than one mutation field in the root selection set.
So now as a follow-up question, as this is now a specification that we write for, or the specification that was written for GraphQL or HTTP, the whole golden path discussion and whatever, and we kind of agree that it's best practice to only have one mutation, and it also kind of could be a should in the GraphQL over HTTP specification. What's the recommendation in the GraphQL golden path now for the does the golden path care about HTTP or not? Or is it only the secure defaults and all of these
I think
things?
it should, right? Because the golden path implies connecting all of the dots together to have a fully functioning system. And so you
Yeah.
kind of have to say something about, yeah, like trusted documents is in there, which implies like what, how do you actually save the document and get it back out? Like presumably there are endpoints for that.
So then if there's a should in the GraphQL or HTTP spec for mutations and HTTP status code, what does the golden path say? You know, should you
Yeah.
return a 201, a 403? Should you do this or not?
Well, I mean, the golden path will say that servers should follow the GraphQL over HTTP spec. Um, but I think the main kind of question here is like actually, I was about to say the GraphQL over HTTP doesn't do the parsing because it hands that over to GraphQL, but that's not true. It does do parsing. It does understand the difference between a parse error and a validation error. And as such, like, yeah, there are it is kind of like the top level execution. Um, but not the actual execution. And this is kind of the difference, right? Because if you run a mutation inside, at the moment, there is no like defined convention for GraphQL to tell you, if you're just a wrapper around GraphQL, that this field returns the equivalent of an HTTP 201 status code. You could embed it into the response payload of your mutation, but you would have to query it to get that result, and you shouldn't be mutating the user's query. You could do it through errors, but that would require an error to happen, which for 201 created, there is no error. So the only other way is through the extensions field. And yeah, I guess we could do it through extensions, and that would be not
But
unreasonable.
do we have to? I mean, I know it's two specifications, and these specifications are not connected technically. Uh, Realistically, all the servers most likely would be probably very easily be able to say that the mutation didn't pass because there was an authorization issue. So technically, like we could have the payload pattern nicely saying that you're actually not allowed to do this, and then we know that it's an authorization issue, and you could return. It's just like I understand all the problems. It's just
I'm not
I
sure that
see.
that's really true. So, like, if you look at the JavaScript ecosystem, for example, basically all of the servers in the JavaScript ecosystem wrap GraphQL, GraphQL JS. Um, and so they don't know what's going on in those resolvers. They're in a different logical space. They just wrap that execution. That's all they do. And this is what the GraphQL over HTTP spec does. It wraps the execution that is handed off to the spec. We can define conventions for talking between them, but we should not assume that everything is built in the same way that it is in other languages where maybe the server and the execution engine are the same piece of software, because that's not the case in JavaScript, and it doesn't have to be the case, and we shouldn't require that it is the case.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I also don't really have a strong need for HTTP status codes on mutations. I just see this argument since 10 years in the
Yeah.
space that we do not have HTTP status code, and it feels like a problem which is fixable. You know what I mean? It's
But also, is it even a problem? It's like, does that, to the point of like, you use the status codes, like there's software which uses status codes to do things. And then the question is, would linking those up do the right thing for GraphQL or the wrong thing? Like, what is the right thing to happen when you're in a GraphQL layer? Because the weird part is GraphQL operates abstractly from HTTP. Like, it uses HTTP as a transport, but it's not like hypermedia in the same way that like REST is designed to be. So it makes sense that we've very intentionally treated it as like the transport succeeded, therefore 200. However, partial success, you can look at your payload and like understand the data to see what happened. And then the problem comes from where, like, is this cacheable? Is it, does this need to reset something? Did this succeed or fail? And you want low-level systems to be able to pick up on HTTP codes to do the right thing. That's when it's pragmatic and practical, and where we should like make good guidance. Like, the reason why you would care about HTTP codes is this domain of software which uses them. And then this is the right way to use GraphQL with this domain of software. Therefore, here's our suggestion.
that's a very good take on it. My take was
Yeah,
just
because like semantics for semantics sake, who cares? Like, it's like, all these codes exist, we should use them. It's like, why? Because like, I don't know, they're cool.
yeah,
Doesn't
that was
it? Yeah,
my thing was just to quiet the people, which says that
yeah.
that was my argument, but yours makes much more sense.
So for me, I'm thinking in terms of you want to be monitoring your systems. And if you're using, say, trusted documents, especially if you're using trusted documents with the URL-based approach, then you know
Mhm.
what document is running. Like, you literally have a URL that identifies it, just the same as you would in a REST endpoint that says, here's the thing that I'm talking about. So for you, seeing suddenly that all your 200s have become 294s for a particular request, that is valuable. That is a thing that you can show in a metrics schema, in a metrics server, and you can actually act upon. You can look for those anomalies, which at the moment with GraphQL you can't do without actually fully parsing the entire response body, which is a lot for an intermediate server to do. So yeah, I'm focused on those kind of values. But things like, and again, I bring it up because it's a success code, 201 created. Errors are
Yep.
easier to handle because we've got things for those. But successes are different. But like a 201 created, that doesn't, like to Lee's point, it doesn't matter for us with regard to like caching and stuff. Like it's just a GraphQL response, the same as any other. And from a client perspective, I've explicitly written into the HTTP spec that clients shouldn't care what the status code is whatsoever, so long as you have the application, the content type correct, like you know that it's definitely a GraphQL response. You should just read the data and errors and you interpret from there. The status code is irrelevant to you. And I want that to be like really clear and crisp in this.
Or rather, the relevancy is at a lower level of abstraction. It's like your underlying systems that run GraphQL failed, and therefore you got a 500. Right? Like your load balancer is down, so 500, or something like that, as opposed to you had an application layer error, in which case, like those are richer than status codes can communicate. So therefore, we don't communicate them in the status code. We communicate them here. But yeah, the important thing is to make sure that we have behavior that plays well with the HTTP ecosystem, which we've found over the course of the years and this spec codifies.
Okay.
So the question following this is essentially, should we put out this version of the spec, which is basically done, that is what we originally set out to do, which is basically encompass everything that already exists in the world, so that basically every GraphQL server that's out there is already spec compliant, and then encourage them towards this new world, which honestly many of them have already adopted, that encourages the use of these status codes? Or should we delay the release of this so that we can merge in the additional changes where we essentially factor all of that legacy support out into an appendix and then push out a simplified version of this, a separated version of this spec? I personally think that we can just do the appendix in a follow-up after like a month or two, so I'm not too bothered about getting that in the first release.
Yeah, I agree.
As, lo-
Is
as
this
long as
another one
it's
that we
done
want to?
for, as long as we can talk about it at GraphQL Conf.
Yeah, I was gonna say this seems like another one that we should just do a final pass through TSC to vote yes for, um, just for absolute clarity. But personally, I'm a
And
go on exactly your plan, Benji.
Benji, what do you think would make it much longer if we wanted to move to Appendix A? Is it just like giving a review window to everyone to review the pull request or something
Yeah,
else?
so I mean, it's a busy time of year coming up for conference. People are going to be writing talks and stuff, so I'd rather not put more work on their plate. And this spec has been in place for multiple years. So if we're going to like restructure parts of it and potentially rewrite parts of it, we will be essentially losing a lot of that confidence that we have in the current version of the spec, and it would need to regain that confidence again.
I mean, the spec has been like this for years, and there is criticism about this spec. Like multiple people have expressed that it's complicated. And at the same time, the number of people who actively engage into the spec isn't that high. Like it's maybe less than 10 people. So could we like make a big, like if we actually engage with the people that care, like we can probably get the same amount of signal in a very short time. This is what I'm saying. Like during all these years, it was there, but the engagement hasn't been super high these last few months. So we could probably speed things up a little bit if we ask, like for TSC people and other people engaged, to make a small vote, yes, no. That could probably speed things up.
Just to push back on that a little bit, like engagement was very high. That's how we have this spec that is
Yeah,
ready to go. There was a lot. Like
it
the
was high.
only
It was
the
high
only thing
until
we've been
what?
waiting for was people to come up with problems that the 294 gave, really.
Yeah. All right.
There's buried in there a good next suggestion action though, which is getting this to RFC3 is one thing, but the other is actually making sure it has pragmatic value, and that is less about its RFC phase and more about making sure that to the degree that it is occasionally complicated, like pulling out the parts that make the most sense and probably writing blog posts about them, or like finding pieces of software which already align and making it clear that they do and they're compliant, or finding the small cases where they don't and fixing them. Those seem like the right things to go resolve. Simplifying, yeah.
Martin, I've not read your pull request yet because obviously you only raised it a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Does it have the effect of making existing GraphQL servers non-compliant, or does it actually like change the meaning of the spec, or is it just a restructure?
I think it's just a restructure because the spec says you can use other media types if you want to. And application/JSON is just another media type, which doesn't happen to belong to the main spec, but it's an appendix. So you can use it. It doesn't make you like uncompliant. It's
Right,
just
but does it require that you implement the new one?
the application/GraphQL response plus JSON. Yeah, it requires, if you want to be compliant for the spec, you need to support this.
I have a feeling that might already be the case anyway, because there was like a cutoff timeline. But I want to be concrete as to whether we're actually changing requirements there. I'll have to read.
I think this is a good push before we solidify if there are opportunities to go through, probably primarily editorially simplify, and maybe structurally simplify if there's cases where we're overly carving out support for older behavior. I think it's okay if we cut out some, if not every HTTP spec out there remains compliant once publishing this, it's not necessarily a terrible thing if it means getting to simplify. So maybe worth one more like comb over to see if we can't pare it down. But I think we could do that within timeline to still talk about this at Conf.
What I was suggesting also is we make a small sprint in April to get this released. So I'm suggesting we move the cadence of the meeting to weekly, which will give us a bit of focus to get that through the finish line. And of course, if everyone agree, we don't have to make all the meetings. But
I suspect a lot of
small...
progress can happen outside of meetings as well, right? Like we'll get the meetings to make sure that progress is happening, but a lot of it is just getting that initial simplification PR assembled and making sure we've got it done. I mean, you've got most of this lifting done, Martine, so I like this plan. Okay, let's do that. And then we will use our various off calendar channels to keep tabs and progress on it.
Sounds good. So let's keep the meeting next week and we can reconvene. Where I think we have a channel on Discord. So let's make a small check the day before, something like this. If there's been any activity. or we can cancel.
Sounds good. Benji, you still want to get through service capabilities?
Yeah, service capabilities. Let me refresh my memory for a moment. So this was originally built in combination with the on error handling, but we've split it out. Turns out that it's useful on its own. So essentially, and it turns, we need it for a number of things to indicate like new syntax support and stuff like that. So I have done so. I've split it out. It's its own RFC. I haven't yet implemented the GraphQL JS version of it independently. I haven't extracted it from the previous implementation, which also does the on error, but there is existing code for it. So essentially, what I will action aim to get this merged as its own thing. For now, I'd like to get us to RFC1 status. Zoom is telling me that my internet connection is unstable, so if I cut out, let me know.
Your audio cut out for a half sec, but we got the gist.
Cool.
I'm going to mark this as RFC1. I think probably whether or not our syntax is right. Actually, like probably the introspection design is the most important piece to nail, and then we can figure out syntax from there. But I think at this point we've talked about this in a couple meetings, and I feel pretty strongly that we need to have an answer for this in order to unlock a lot of the other things we want to be able to do. And it has like really nice back propagation across other features that GraphQL has that are like fuzzily on or off. So it seems genuinely useful even if we were never to use it for net new things. So our bar for crossing RFC1 is not particularly high. It's just like we agree that this is a problem we're solving. I feel pretty strongly that that's the case. Anyone's willing to say no, please do so. But otherwise, RFC1.
Awesome. I will try and get a GraphQL JS implementation of this up and running. I think the spec text is basically done, to be honest. I did follow Martin's suggestion and have renamed capability identifier to capability name to correlate with the qualified name that it is. I'm okay either way, but like seemed reasonable.
Cool.
Other than that, it's basically the same as it has been for a little while.
Any other targeted feedback that you want or discussions you want to have in here while you're working towards that?
Not wanting to open another can of worms. So you may have heard me mention earlier that I'm not happy with the way that deprecation is handled in the spec and in introspection specifically. I've been trying to think about what should be and this is separate. This can be done as a follow-on, but it's worth having in mind for the like future compatibility stuff. I've been trying to work out where we should be handling this schema with regard to getting the deprecated schema versus, or the full schema versus the schema with all the deprecated parts removed. And one option is to make that a field under dunder service. So it could be like dunder service and then schema include deprecated true false, which then returns dunder schema. So I'm interested to know whether that seems like the right idea or whether we should actually just be like changing the dunder schema meta field itself to now support arguments. So yeah, I was just wondering if anyone had thoughts on that basis.
I have not thought super deeply about it, so it's entirely possible that something very basic breaks the idea. But my thought was, in hindsight, I wish that I had put that include deprecated not on a fields introspection, but on the schema introspection, so that you asked for essentially one of two schemas. You asked for the schema which included all deprecated things, or you asked for the schema which did not. And that was just like a contextually aware piece of information that flowed through all other things you reached from there. I think the only reason why we did not is because you could access dunder type and get like a specific type out. And obviously in that case, you would need to do the same. Because are you getting the type from which the schema with deprecations in it or the schema without it? That would be my thought, is lifting it up to that level. In which case, if you were to extend it to support it there, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would have done option A, like avoid the scenario where we introduce two sources of truth for which field gives you the schema. But I see why you're suggesting plausibly doing that to avoid a breaking change.
Yeah, I think it's probably okay adding it to the meta field. The only real difference is that if we add it to dunder service, we can change the default to exclude deprecated by default. So you have to opt in to seeing deprecated. Whereas we can't do that with the dunder field because it already needs to include them unless you I can't remember. Yes, if you strip it out by default, then even when you browse through the fields later, you can't add deprecated things back in again because your full schema representation would already have
Yeah.
had them removed.
There's already like this very strange assumption. Like you can certainly break building an introspection query by if you need to access fields in more than one place and one of them has include deprecated and the other one does not, you will produce an invalid schema by doing that. So yeah, this one probably deserves some deep diving, but all the various cases where it's like, and then this edge case is now technically possible. It's like there probably are edge cases that are already technically possible that break in this way. And so we should just like set the appropriate bar to clear for correctness. The other one that's interesting in the same domain is like SDL as a source of truth. Like, is there something in the service, a field in service that gives you a string text that's just like the entire SDL resolution of the scheme of it? Or is that even supposed to be part of introspection? Is that just like an HTTP endpoint you can hit or something?
Yeah, I think doing it as a HTTP endpoint that can be indicated through a service capability would definitely work.
Yeah.
And might be the best bet. But if we were to add it to introspection, I'd add it to the dunder schema because it's essentially a representation of the schema rather than the service, I would say.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
I would be interested if anyone comes up with things that are properties of the service that are not capabilities, though, because I really want to make sure that we're like planning well enough ahead there, but I haven't managed to come up with any yet. Which is, description is literally the only other one that I've come up with, which isn't super compelling.
Yeah. Um,
I mean,
yeah, part of it is making me think like, is there not, if not, then there's an opportunity to ditch the capability keyword within the service block and have that be implied, which is
Exactly.
yeah, maybe scary because if we want to add something else in the future, then we would need to have something not non-ambiguous. Or we could replace the word capability with some sort of character or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if we were to add something new in the future, it would need a character of some kind to be clearly differentiated.
And another option, like entirely, is to just not use the service keyword at all and just use capabilities as a top level keyword, and just say these are the capabilities. But yeah. Anyway, feedback on all of
Yeah.
this welcome. Like let's figure out where we're going.
Okay. I think that's right. Yeah. Everyone, please give this service capabilities PR a read. But RFC1. Run RFC1. Cool. That's our agenda for the day. We used the vast majority of our time. Good conversations. Okay, so follow-up actions, further reads and feedback on service capabilities. GraphQL over HTTP, one notch away from RFC3 with one last concerted effort to simplify before we cross that line. We're going to do a vote for Hotel WG with the TSC to approve our final version there. I think that was all of our actions. Very good. All right, friends. Thanks, y'all. See y'all very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. See
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.